Okay, greetings everyone. This is Josh with Big Slick Adventures, and we are doing our first episode of the Horror Hangout. And today, or this evening, I'm having a guest, a fellow author, uh, Kathleen McCluskey. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did. Very good.
Good. Who's the author of the Long Fall series. And of course, we met on the Slasher app, which is a basically a social media platform for basically horror nerds like ourselves. So, um,
I wear
so
that
how you doing? How you
proudly.
doing, Kathleen?
Well. It was 60 degrees here in Pennsylvania today. I cannot complain. It's
It,
February the 10th, and I was walking around with just a T-shirt on. I mean,
mm-hmm.
of course, but in Pennsylvania it's just weird. So I've been having a pretty good day. Can't complain.
It's warmer than here in Texas. Today, probably didn't get up to. It's supposed to snow tonight too. On
Yeah,
top
it's
of
supposed
that,
to snow on Monday for us, but that's all right. I'll take that 60 degrees.
yeah, easily. I think it'll be in the 30s. Probably. I'll be the grocery store was packed today too because I stopped it because everyone freaks out whenever there's going to be snow in the forecast. They freak out.
Toilet paper, milk, and bread to the store. Yep.
Yeah. So anyhow, so how long has it been since when did you first start writing, and what I guess motivated or inspired you to write in the first place?
Well, I mean, when I was a kid, I wrote a story for my father that I found in his nightstand after he passed away. I must have been 7, and I even stapled the pages together. I did the drawings. It was called The Monday Monster, and the Monday Monster jumps out from under your bed and bites you on the ankle and makes you miserable on Mondays. So it's always come naturally to me. My friends were always the ones that were like, "Hey, tell us a story, creep us out." Or I wrote for my school newspaper in high school. I wrote for my college paper in college. It's just, I don't know. It's just always been there. Just always loved it. Loved the English language. Math, not so much, but English and history, yeah, I'm all about it.
That's interesting too. You mentioned it because English and history were like my two best subjects in school. It used to be math was really good until I got into high school, and once we got into like geometry or trigonometry and
Crap.
anything other onetries, I'm like, okay, I am not gonna. I know pretty sure I'm not gonna be an engineer or scientist when I grow up. I'm not gonna really need this stuff when I grow up.
Right, exactly, exactly. Yeah, I'm not good at math whatsoever. Yeah.
I can do the base. Well, the math they're doing now, they're teaching my kids. I see some of this stuff when they need help, and I'm like, what the heck are they teaching?
No,
Because I have no idea what to do that.
when I see people online that crucify the English language, I always say, "Up, must be like the new math. It's the new English." It gives me a headache.
Exactly. So, what drew you to writing in the horror, I guess, also fantasy genre for the most part?
I mean, I wanted to write to the Long Fall. When I wanted to write that, I wanted to write a vampire book, but I didn't know who to make the first vampire. When I figured that out, I was like, "Well, how? He needs a backstory." So I went all the way back to the beginning, and jumped back into my Catholic upbringing, and that's where the biblical stuff comes from in the fantasy. But I've always been drawn to that darkness, that Halloween, and waiting around a corner for hours waiting for your sister to walk by so you could jump out and scare the pants off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was always all about that. And my mom and I used to watch, you know, uh, Kolchak the Night Stalker and
I remember that show.
Stone and Night Gallery. And, yeah, well, Dukes of Hazzard too, but we liked Bo and Luke. Um, Yeah, I've always loved the horror genre. I think it's the adrenaline because before I've messed up my back royally, I was a
hmm
platform junkie. I was a platform diver. I was bungee jumping out of airplanes. That kind of craziness.
So, tell us more about the Long Fall. I've read the first book of this series. I haven't gotten to the other ones yet. Probably will after I get done writing my next book. But so tell everyone that's listening what is the Long Fall about?
Okay, The Long Fall is basically Lucifer's story. The first book starts out, he's still an archangel. You get to meet the other 6 siblings that are all brothers and sisters. They all have different powers, different personalities. It starts in a courtroom. Lucifer's the prosecuting attorney, Gabriel's the defense attorney, mankind's on trial. And when he loses the case, he loses his mind and he starts a big war in heaven. And when he gets banished to the planet, he has 2 sons. Or no, when he gets banished to hell, he has 2 sons. And one son kills the other and he banishes him to the planet. And now he can't be in sunlight. He can only feed on the very beings that Lucifer hates the most, which is mankind. So I made him the first vampire, is Lucifer's son. And that's the
I see.
is all about the vampires in the second book. And then the third book is all apocalyptic. Like, who's going to win? You know,
Mm-hmm.
is Michael going to kill his brother? Is he going to give him a reprieve? Is, what's going to happen? So that's the life of the Long Fall and of Lucifer's story. I don't know where it all came from.
Mm-hmm.
Out of my head, it's like a demented amusement park in there sometimes.
Well, it's always an interesting how these stories come about. One thing I liked about yours, and I don't know if you intended to do this in the first place, because I found myself when I'm writing, I'll look back, goes, oh wow, I just put like a little commentary or some sort of social message that in a story that I didn't even intend to do. But the way I kind of interpreted, at least because I've read the first book, is oftentimes when we talked about history earlier, when oftentimes when we study wars, we're told, well, this side's the good guys, this side's the bad guys.
Right.
But more times than not, it's a lot more complicated than that. There's shades of gray, and you can even look at some of our more recent conflicts around the world. I won't go too much into them, but oftentimes, even if there is a bad guy, at some point they were provoked into doing what they're doing. And I look at your story, especially looking at the Archangel Michael, who's a very central character in your story. He's every bit of a self-righteous narcissist that Lucifer is, if not more. And then we throw Jehovah into that. And so you find yourself, I can't totally blame Lucifer for flying off the handle a little bit. Gabriel, on the other hand, seems pretty level-headed and pretty humble, but Michael, he's definitely full of himself in this story. So,
right. Well, he's the firstborn, and he's also, he's the warrior. He's the biggest. He's the baddest. Like, if you don't like what his opinion is, he'll just hit you on the top of the head and kill you, because that's how big he is, and that's how arrogant he is, and he knows he has the power. So, yeah. And I tried to write them with different personalities. And I'm the youngest of 5 siblings, so I know that dichotomy pretty well with how siblings work and how, you can back one, but then you can also back the other because you still love them, even though they're not really on the side of good. Maybe they are on the side of good. So you're not real sure what's going on in the book too, because of the way that I wrote the characters. I tried to get that's rounded both sides, good and evil in both of them, and in all of them.
Yeah, I'm like the oldest of 3, and I have to look at myself like, God, did I act like that with my younger siblings? I probably more so with my brother, who's the middle child, than I did with my sister, who's the youngest, because there's like a 10-year gap between me and her. So therefore, I'm not going to be picking on her because there's no sport into it. But certainly my brother was caught the crap in the end, more or less.
Yeah, my oldest sibling is 14 years older than me, so yeah, I totally get where you're coming from with your with your younger sibling. I get it.
Yeah, definitely. So was that something about, as far as the wars go, was that something you intentionally wrote, that you wanted to make this a gray area for everyone, or was it just something that came natural?
I did, and it's funny that you say that there's a lot of gray area in there, because I tried to write like espionage kind of stuff, but at the time, I was really, really into the show Vikings. So that's where a lot of that hand-to-hand descriptive comes from, is because I was actually seeing it, but in my mind, I was seeing angels fighting and not the Vikings raping and pillaging. But it's the same kind of, you know what I mean? It's the same kind of action and that's where the wars came in for me. But that gray area, again, that's that sibling, like, you know, blood's always thicker. And it doesn't matter sometimes, you know, like some of the archangels side with Lucifer because they see his point. They're like, he has a point. You know, mankind's awful. Look at them. I mean, look at us. We're awful.
Well, yeah, we are.
So,
have you ever seen that TV show? It was on AMC called Preacher.
What's that about?
It is based off a graphic novel, and it's about basically a preacher who kind of loses his faith with God. And it's just really crazy.
Oh, wait a minute. Is that the one that he has the cross tattooed on his forehead?
No.
That's Priest. That's Priest. Never mind.
Right. Preacher was ran for about 3 or 4 episodes, and it's just a batshit crazy show.
I gotta watch it. You just gave me something tomorrow before the game.
It's if you're, let's put it this way, a lot of extremely religious people would be pissed off by it because they would probably consider it blasphemous because God is not shown in a very good light at all in this show.
Yeah, I was gonna send my the long fall to that crazy preacher that, you know, that dark haired guy that has all the money, and he's Joel
Osteen.
That's him. I was going to send him a copy of my book and have him just be rated on his show because, you know, hey, it's advertisement.
Yeah, free publicity for sure.
Yeah.
So do you have a certain? It's interesting you're talking about visualizing. You know, when you're talking about the Vikings, I have found myself. I did this with my previous story that's out, and I'm kind of doing a little bit of it now with the book I'm working on now, where I kind of like, before I even write a chapter, I kind of like visualize the whole thing in my head.
Yep.
And I'm to the point to where I'll even like, well, if this was a movie, what actor would I have playing this role or that role? You know.
Yep.
And do you do something similar to that? Do you like visualize it?
It plays like a movie in my head. And I'm one of those writers. Some people say that it's the way of hack writing because of the outline. I don't use any of that stuff. If I sit down with an idea, I just write it. And then I'll go back and edit it out and fix it. But the initial thought, I have to get out of my head or it drives me crazy. Like, I almost obsess about it.
Right.
You know, I'll be sitting at work and I'll be supposed to be doing paperwork and I'll be thinking about, you know, what would an angel with one wing look like? You know, crazy shit like that. I just, sometimes, like I said,
my writing style is pretty free form. You know, it's like I almost like will write the first couple chapters out, and then once I might write down like a brief little outline with some bullet points just to kind of map everything else out, just to give me an idea what each chapter could look like. But it's nothing that's overly formal or etched in stone. I know I'm going to make some changes at some point, but I'm pretty much the same way. I just write whatever I think is going to work, and then, like I said, go back. Proofreading and editing is always the worst part of it, I think.
Editing,
because I did not have anyone else proofread my story. I did it all on my own. For this next one, I'm definitely going to have someone look over it because I was still finding stuff like, oh, why did I do that and all that.
And you know what? First books are always, you know, it's your raw talent is coming out. After you've written it, because I write every month for that blog, and then I'm working on other stuff, and it just keeps everything so sharp that when I do sit down to write, it just flows out. And if I have an idea, it has to marinate in my head, if that makes any sense. I have to roll it around and try different scenarios. Like when I started The Long Fall, I thought of Courtroom, I thought of Garden of Eden, I thought of different scenarios in my head, and I always came back to the courtroom, and I was like, "That's where we're going." And then I let that marinate, and before I knew it, I had all 3 novels written in like a year. All 3 in like a year. It was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty good there. So before you had written Longfall, had you just done like a lot of like casual writing here and there, like
Yeah, a little bit of
as a practice almost?
yeah, and it's funny. I actually started out as a poet. I have 2 poems actually published in the Library of Congress books, and I actually started out as like a rhyming poet. But I was just drawn to more words. I wanted more
Right.
words. I wanted more description. I wanted more. I wanted more. So that's when I went to writing instead of just writing. Can't really write too many descriptive words in a sentence that's this long.
Yeah, no kidding. For me, it was about a year. Normally, I have never done like a New Year's resolution. But finally, last year, I said, you know what? I've been wanting to do this for 25 years. I'm going to write something, anything, just write a story, whatever. And my first story was actually like a fan fiction story, basically. It was a crossover between Hellraiser and Halloween, essentially. And, I more or less did for practice because it's obviously nothing I can actually publish because of rights issue, unless Clive Barker wants to pick it up and run with it. But he's more than happy to. But
first,
he can pay me $5, and if he wants him and Malika Cod at the Halloween side want to do something with it, great. But and with that, I learned how to write characters. Even though these were established characters, I had to stop and think, okay, what is, because I was going off the events of Halloween 4 and off the events of Hellraisers 1 and 2 primarily. So I had to stop and think, okay, what's Jamie Lloyd going to be like now, 20 years later? What's Kirsty Cotton going to be like 20 years later? And because, Pinhead's going to be Pinhead no matter if we're talking 300 years in the future or 10 years in the future. Michael Myers is going to be pretty much the same no matter what. But with the protagonist, I had to...
Sorry.
What was that?
I said, unless some nerd steals his mask. Oh, man, I was so mad about that.
I could go on.
Yeah.
Those... We'll get off... Why not? We'll get off topic. We can talk whatever we want to. Those 3 Halloween films, I don't ever want to hear anyone bitch about the Rob Zombie films ever again. Let's put it that way.
I mean,
I'll take Rob Zombie's trailer trash, white trash director style any day over David Gordon Green. It's not even close. There, I said it. Come out with pitchforks.
Halloween Kills. That it was just a juggernaut of violence. It blew the doors off of anything I had ever seen on film. It was so violent. I just couldn't believe it. Just a juggernaut. In the ending of that, when they're killing him and then he gets up and you're just like,
you got the guy playing Tommy Doyle, and God bless him. I love, what's his name? He was in National Lampoon's Vacation and 16 Candles and all those movies. I love him. He's a great actor, and he did the best he could with the dialogue, but he's like literally doing a pro wrestling promo in that bar. Well, he'll come out for you tonight. Like, what the fuck are you? Who the hell?
So right.
And as us being writers, even before I started writing, I've always had a writer's brain. So when a story doesn't make sense, like, oh, let's turn Laurie Strode into Sarah Connor now,
right?
Or what are we have a? Why is Michael Myers even still in Smith's Grove? Shouldn't he be on death row by now?
Right.
It's 40 years later. He's going to up and decide, I think I'll break out, even though my back's kind of hurting a little bit,
In my 70s, I need a walker.
It's just like, yeah. So there, we said it. We
Okay, there we go. Our opinions on Halloween and Rob Zombie.
It's not the direction I would have gone for sure.
Either, but
it is what it is.
And we don't.
Way I look at it, I have my Halloween films. It's mainly 1, 2, 4, H2O, and the 2 Rob Zombie films, and I'm good. Whatever else they want to do is fine. I've got mine,
Those
and
are
that works
two.
for me.
But you know what? Just for laughs, you have to put in the Busta Moves doing kung fu. You have
I
to.
said at the point, why didn't they just do a Halloween multiverse movie and just brought all the Michael Myers, all these characters, all in one tent? Just it doesn't have to make sense, and the whole movie could have ended with Dr. Chalice, Tom Atkins, sitting at a bar, flirting around with a bartender a third of his age. All the Michael Myers sit down at a bar. The little goofy Halloween 3 jingle comes up. Their faces melt, and Busta Rhymes comes out and says, "Trick or treat, motherfucker," and just end it like that.
He does kung fu.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus. Okay.
That would have been a better ending than what we got in Halloween Ends.
Agreed. Agreed. Agreed.
So what are you? Obviously, you do. Tell us more about these blogs you do on a monthly,
It's called
every month.
Writer's Word.
Mm-hmm.
The lady's name is Nina, and she gives me a picture. And in 300 to 700 words, I have to make up a story. Being a novelist, can be difficult for me because I want
Right.
to know, like, I'll get an idea and it'll marinate in my head for 2 days, and then I want to write an entire novel about it.
Mm-hmm.
I have to sit down and write. Sorry, that's my dog. And I have to, 400 words, and sometimes I find them extremely difficult. And sometimes I sit down, and in 5 minutes I have 700 words, and I'm done. Just all depends on the picture, I guess, and where my brain is going at the time. But it keeps my writing skills very sharp. I just got a new gig. It's called Pen of the Damned. It's an e-zine and an e-magazine. I write for them every month. One is another short flash fiction, but this one's even shorter. It can only be up to 300 words. No dialogue. It has to be all descriptive narrative. And then there's another one that they want that's 1,500 words, which you get a little bit more leeway with. But I mean, I enjoy it, and it keeps my writing skills super duper sharp. And the blog gives you exposure, and people see your name, and maybe they'll buy your book. And
Yeah, it helps.
it does whatever helps.
Now, did you just totally self-publish your first book, or were you able to find a publisher for
My
those?
book, I actually had a publisher, and 3 days before my book release, they called me and told me they were out of business.
Fun.
So I had a finished novel. I had everything, and so I just self-published the first one. And a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend,
Mm-hmm.
5 times removed kind of thing, read some of my stuff that was on the blog and read my first book and contacted me. And he's an indie publisher, and he said, can I please publish, and do you have a second book written? And I said, actually, I have 2 more written. And he said, I'd love to publish them. And that's how I got in with Green Ivy Press.
Okay.
It's nice. And now I'm working on I have another novel that I had beta readers take out,
Mm-hmm.
and they loved it, and now it needs edited, and then I'm going to put that one out. But I'm probably going to shop that one around first to some pictures and see. And if not, then I'll just self-publish it and see where it goes.
Yeah. The only problem, of course, I had to self-publish my book, Hangman of Darkness, and I guess the big struggle with that is the marketing and promoting of it. It's just, because I haven't really sold as much as I would have liked to, but I've got a few ideas. I'm eventually going to just buy a bulk order, because I've also now have it on Lulu besides Amazon.
Your book was excellent, by the way.
Oh, you read it? Okay. Thank you.
I'm so busy. I mean, work is crushing me right now.
Uh-huh.
And reading, and then I have another novel that my daughter wants me to read. I don't know, she got it at Steel City Con. I don't know. And then I read yours, and then I'm studying for a CPO test. So yeah, it's a little hectic, but yes, I loved your book. Very good.
Good. Thank you.
Hey, have you ever heard of Sol Stein? Sol is his first name. His last name's Stein. He writes.
No, I have not.
Yeah, he writes books that are like a writer's best friend. He
Hmm.
writes character development. He writes do's and don'ts. He writes you how to write a hook. I mean, I've read 3 of his books, and my writing has gone like the long fall is very raw from like
Hmm.
my writing style is very raw. Then now it's graduated. 7 years later, it's graduated to where it's almost looks like a different author, but it's not because it's the same pace. If that makes
Right.
sense. Um, but Solstein really, really, really helped me a lot. Like not starting sentences with ing words, not using excessive ing words when you're describing something. Instead of saying he was running quickly, you can
Hmm.
say he sped down the road, or his feet were fleeting, or he was fleet on his feet as he ran down the street. I know that rhymes, but hey, I used to be.
Hmm.
But you see
Right.
what I mean? He'll teach you how to have it flow and the use of the Oxford comma, which is, I think, paramount, especially with descriptive narrative. You need to have that comma and that pause in there so that the reader knows that it's emphasized. So I would recommend getting his books. They're
I
so
may, and that's something I'm still learning. Especially now as I'm writing basically my second book, um, is how to maybe play around with my dialogue a little better and all that, which is, because with Hangman,
teach you
that
about
book,
dialogue.
what was that?
He does teach you about dialogue. Like if you're
Mm,
writing and you're writing something in the backwoods of West Virginia, you're not going to be talking about physics and string theory, probably. You may be having somebody say, y'all, or I'm
ex-
fixing to go to the store.
exactly.
But he's like, you have to be very cognizant of what area of the world these characters are from because everybody's from somewhere.
Well, exactly. And with my book being basically something that predominantly takes place in post Civil War, basically the Old West. Fortunately, I've watched enough John Wayne and Clint Eastwood movies in my time that I have a general idea on how they speak back then,
Right.
what their overall attitudes and what society was like back then, that have a good frame of reference,
Excuse me.
which is oftentimes a tricky thing when you're doing period pieces. And I'm
Yep.
running in with this current book I'm writing, it does a lot of time jumps. So I'm in the 1700s Scotland to current day United States to I'll be going into Romania here pretty soon. So I have to do a lot of research to see what the times were like and think how they spoke and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean he's excellent. If you ever want to get tips or whatever, those are the books to go to. Solstein. Yeah.
Sounds good. Unfortunately, I've been able to, just with us, way we've corresponded with you. There's been a few other authors I've corresponded with that have given me a lot of helpful tips along the way, trying to
Awesome.
figure all this out. And,
Yeah, the first thing
um,
I do, the first tab that I open after I open up my document is the Merriam-Webster thesaurus.
mm-hmm,
I mean, you have to when you're a horror, especially a horror writer. You could only say malevolent, malignant, psychotic, demented, decrepit. You can only use those words so many flipping times before the reader's like, oh,
yeah, and that's what I often worry about. With the Hangman, my main focus was to focus on the characters. I wanted to make them as relatable as possible and put them in situations that people even nowadays could relate to. Because I dealt a little bit with like PTSD in the confines of the Civil War. Because obviously that was a thing that just didn't have a name for it.
right.
I dealt with things like that, things of what women with one particular character, what women go through as they get older, which I think the character Genevieve, who was my favorite character in that whole book. Yeah, she's only 40. To us, that's nothing nowadays, but back then,
And yeah, she was in
exactly.
the 80s, basically. You know what I
And I
mean?
really, exactly, and I really tried to make her the anchor of that story, kind of for our two main, which was Jacob and Luann. I wanted her to be that anchor, but at the same time, I gave her a little bit of a kind of almost, well, I don't want to say a feminist arc, but an arc
a little bit
of empowerment, I think.
Attitude. I'm like,
yeah, which is why she was, the scene with her and the hangman. There was a reason why I pretty much stripped her down and had her injured, because I wanted her at her most vulnerable. So when the unexpected happens and she actually fights them off, instead, most of the time in these stories, if you lose your clothes, you pretty much lose your life. But not this time. I wanted to subvert expectations in that case.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. I mean, I like them kind of stories, and Outlaw Josie Wales is my favorite Clint Eastwood movie.
And that story that movie probably influenced me a little bit because writing that.
Yeah, I felt that because that's post Civil War. That's that's where my brain went, because that's my reference for that movie. If that makes sense, when I was reading your book.
Oh, exactly. And it's interesting too. Like with yours, when I was, like I said, reading that, I don't know why I was getting Clash of the Titans vibes. Like this is like the biblical version. If you were going to do a biblical version of Clash of the Titans, this would kind of be like that almost.
Well, because I made the archangels to be like this big. Okay. Mm-hmm. I made the regular angels to be like this, and human beings are like this. So the archangels are big, badass, and I want to be like that, so that when they go to war, it's gonna be ugly. Now, so
yeah.
Those horses were a lot of fun to write. Those apocalyptic horses were so much fun to write, especially Death.
Oh yeah,
because he's such a because he's deaf. So go ahead and touch me, you stupid angel. You'll be dead in seconds. I'm deaf. Whoa.
That's like too, giving the horses some personality of their own, and their characters in their own right, other than just mere animals that these angels are riding around and whatnot.
Right. And then the twist where the fifth horse comes in.
I really liked, and now basically it was the sister angel. Basically had two sister angels. One that sided with Lucifer, and the one, and I forget her name, but she was definitely a warrior. I thought Xena, Princess Warrior, whenever this character came into play.
It's crazy. I modeled Uriel after one of my sisters.
Mm-hmm.
I have a sister. She's 6 foot tall. She's beautiful. She's got, she's buxom. She's got little waist. She's got, she's hourglass. That's who I saw when I was writing Uriel, was my sister Jackie, the way that she's built and the way that she's stature,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Xena probably fits that too, because my sister Jackie, 6 foot tall, 5'5".
Yeah, that was a character I really liked too. I'm like, yeah, because that's the thing from a male perspective. When we look at female characters, we're looking at one or two things to connect with. Either we're looking at one that we relate to as a relative, whether it's like and I'm sure women do the same thing with male characters. We're looking at either like a motherly figure, a sisterly figure, or I want to date that person. and certainly Ariel's one that, I want to, if I was single, I would want to with her.
Yeah, she's badass. She's one of the generals. So, and then the crazy one that sides with Lucifer, the one that takes care of the horses. She's pretty present in all of the books. I mean, I made her seem weak and very, very easily manipulated in the beginning, because I wanted her to be manipulated by Lucifer, and she was. So, even though they're siblings, he still manipulated her.
Oh yeah, but she too has a little bit of an arc. I noticed in the first book, she went from this meek little shy thing to where she got a certain level of empowerment herself from Lucifer.
Hey, she turned into a demon. She turned into the female version of Lucifer. So
yeah.
she's got some hatred and some issues going on there. She's a little bit of issues, a little bit of daddy issues, I guess, right? Don't we all?
Oh, definitely. And who better than Jehovah to have daddy issues with?
Let's see. Yeah, see. Okay, good.
These poor angels, they really don't have like a mother figure,
Mm-mm.
really.
Yep.
So it's no wonder they act all fucked up.
Right, exactly. No wonder they just run wild and try and kill each other.
Yeah.
Oh, the sibling love.
They don't have the mother figure to try and rein everyone in and whatnot.
Mother Nature. There we go. Yeah, I love Mother Nature. I love that character. I do so much with her. I mean, I'm currently working on one. It's called. Well, I finished it. I have to edit it. Ugh, editing.
Yeah.
But it's called The Casting of Gods. It's about witches, and they're a lunar coven, but they also respect Mother Nature. So I had a little bit of liberty where I could lunar goddess it and Mother Nature it, and it's pretty cool. I mean, I think so, but it's about witches. I had somebody read it, and they said to me, "They're not very nice people." And I was
They're
like,
not supposed to be.
"Fuck, they're flipping witches." So they're not nice people. They're witches, for God's sake. I don't know what he thought. Maybe Bette Miller, isn't that her name from Hocus Pocus? Isn't that who was in it?
I've never seen that movie. I
Me
just,
either.
for whatever reason,
I've only seen gifs of it.
for whatever reason, it just never appealed to me. If I want to watch a movie about witches, I want to watch Lords of Salem, or just recently, I finally watched The Witch, Robert Eggers movie, just earlier this week for the first time. That's what I want to see out of a witch movie. I don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to see like power and they're witches. They're not Glenda the Good Witch from you're going to drop a house on my sister and I'm going to say, "Oh, thank you so much." They're going to be vengeful, and so that's what I'm. And then I'm actually almost done with a novella I just wrote, and it's about Joseph Mengele.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he escapes hell, and he finds a nice geneticist to possess. Possess a geneticist that is working with eugenics and twins. So of course Mengele is drawn to him. So yeah, I got to purge this amusement park out of my head somehow.
Oh, exactly. I'm like, mine is a lot more the Hangman was pretty much a very linear story, very simple in its own way. And this one I'm writing now is more or less a series of basically 5 different stories that will all interconnect. Like I said, I'm jumping from time to time. There are vampires in predominantly a vampire story, but they're not really to be the main villains. Let's put it that way. I almost use them similarly to how Clive Barker used the Cenobites in the original Hellraiser. They're kind of there to pretty much be judge, jury, and executioners, and it's really the humans that are really the real villains. That's kind of where I'm going with it. So
awesome. And that's kind of like what I did with the Casting of Gods, the witches story that I'm going to be getting start to shop around. I wanted them to not be the biggest threat, but in the beginning of the book, you do think they are the biggest threat because they do some wicked shit,
right?
But they're really not. And then it all comes together like halfway through. You finally figure out what's going on.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I'm doing a little bit with mine. It's part horror, it's part mystery, there's part love story, there's just lots of things in there that I threw in there.
I cannot write love stories. I can't do it. I can write F scenes. I can write shit out of a pornographic story, man. But a love scene or a love story, like genuine, try to convey that on paper, I don't know. I avoid it. That's why
I kind of, as you know, I kind of will incorporate it with it just because it marks such a stark contrast between whatever, death, or or the horrors of life. I try to use that as a contrast, and especially with this one, it gets kind of erotic in a couple of scenes there, and those were kind of really weird to write because I didn't know exactly how in depth I need to be going in with this or not, to the
What
point
then
where
to get an X rating, but you want it to be, but then you don't want it to be. If that makes any sense at all, I think I
yes, exactly, and I've had to play around with it because there was something similar to that in the Hellraiser Halloween story that I wrote, where there is a scene before I bring the Cenobites back into there, where this couple breaks into the Myers house, and they're engaged in some S&M type of stuff because that is part of the Hellraiser lore. So I thought it was a great way to bring in. They open the box, and of course, they Pinhead and company pretty much show them the true meaning of pain and pleasure. It's very reminiscent of in the Hellbound Heart of the scene where Frank gets ripped to pieces when he first opens the box.
right.
I definitely, it was just my next question. Are there any authors or writers that have influenced you in one way or another? Or
Um,
just, or
hey,
at least ones that you just inspired you to write?
and the ones I don't know about inspire me, but I mean, of course, I love King. If you could see this room I'm in right now, it's my bedroom. It's just loaded with Stephen King books. But I do love Clive Barker. I like Dean Koontz. I know the horror community doesn't really care for Dean Koontz. I like him. I mean, people
Mm-hmm.
think he's long-winded and preachy. Yeah, sometimes, but it's
Mm-hmm.
still a good story. But I really like Richard Lehman as a one that people don't really know too much about. Bentley Little, another one that I
Mm-hmm.
just absolutely adore. I'm trying to look over here. I have Peter Benchley's entire series over here. Just I don't know. Anne Rice I like.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But then I also, I like to read indie stories too because I want to see other authors and where their brains are at and what they're writing about and what what's popular maybe in California that's not popular right about here in Pennsylvania or vice versa. You know what I mean? So I try to write and I try to read a wide variety,
Mm-hmm.
but it's always horror and it's not always horror. It's always like I like James Patterson, but that's
Uh-huh.
mystery and crime kind of stuff.
Right.
But I always come back to the horror. I always come back to the horror. Can't help it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, prior to me writing, I had not really read a whole lot of horror fiction. I had read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I had read that. I'd read Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I had read The Hellbound Heart by Barker, and then a little bit of Stephen King, but most part I would read biographies and historicals type of stuff. When after I started writing, that's when I really started looking at other authors currently. And of course, I discovered two great authors, Ruth Ann Jaggi and Natasha Sinclair, who wrote a book called The Delvin House together. Then, of course, I discovered you, I discovered Carrie, and lots of other authors. And it's been a great journey. I wish I could read everyone's book, but obviously, time constraints and whatnot. Probably after I get done writing this book, then I'll take some time off to do some more reading and then get back into it.
Right. See, I try to take time off, but then I'll see something or I'll hear something,
Mm-hmm.
and the wheels start turning in my head, and then the juices start flowing, and starts marinating, and before you know it, it's driving me crazy. So I have to put it on paper. So
Right, and that's you'll every once in a while on Slasher you'll see me. Oh boy, Josh is at it again. He's writing this like this essay long post because a idea popped in his head and he just has to write it down. And which I do that every once in a while. You'll see. Uh-oh.
and there it goes again. See, that's why I like those flash fictions because it just keeps my brain moving, and I think they keep me sane.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not very sane anyway, but I think they keep me relatively sane.
Well, of course, we're not saying we're writers.
I know.
Uh,
What was I thinking? What was I thinking? Oh my god.
no. So, what brought you in? Talk about horror movies. what was like that first horror movie that really brought you into the genre that you
Ooh.
can remember?
Yeah, that's still my favorite movie to this day, Halloween '78. I mean, there's really no blood in it. They had the budget was so tight, and it was, you can see John Carpenter's smoke in it. You see one of the kids in it. There's all kinds of mistakes in it, but that is my favorite horror movie of all time. I mean, I saw The Exorcist and I saw Jaws before that, but there's something about, I don't know if it's because it's John Carpenter, and then after I watched Halloween '78, then I started really looking for him.
Mm-hmm.
Movies would come out and they would say John Carpenter's The Thing, and I'd be like, oh shit, I gotta go see that. It's John Carpenter. Fell in love with him. So I really like John Carpenter movies, and I don't know if it was Carpenter or if it was Myers or if it was the fact there wasn't any gore in it that grabbed my 14-year-old brain. Who knows? 13-year-old brain? I don't know. But I saw it in the theater in '78, and that's all she wrote. I was done. Michael
Mm-hmm.
was, he's a man.
Yeah, that was, Halloween's a lot like, it's the same thing with like, even a movie like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Black Christmas. Those are three movies that after you get done watching them, you think you just watch a total gore fest.
Right.
But really, there's hardly any blood in any of those three particular movies when you think about it. Jaws, a PG movie, which was PG, by the way, was far more gorier than those three movies I just mentioned.
I mean, my God, when Alex Kittner gets eaten and all that blood comes bubbling up out of the ocean, holy smokes, and that was PG. That's the '70s.
Yeah, that's the '70s for it. Halloween gets an R rating probably because they showed a couple times they showed boobs in it. I'm guessing.
Okay, that's probably why. Yeah.
Even though in Jaws, the opening scene, you get a good glimpse of the girl going out swimming too. So
right, but that's funny. Yeah, I mean, Texas Chainsaw. The only thing that ruined that for me was Franklin.
I think he ruined it for most everyone.
From the moment he opened his mouth in the van, I wanted him dead.
Just like it's kind of like Teddy in Friday the 13th, Chapter 4. You just counting down. Please kill this guy. Kill this guy. Kill this guy.
Please make it quick and don't make it quick. Make it painful and but do it soon.
Yeah.
Like the kid in the Babadook. I just wanted the Babadook to eat him.
Oh God. No, that's like in was it House by the Cemetery? Now, I can't blame the kid actor per se because they overdubbed the voice because that's an Italian film.
Oh,
whoever they got to overdub for that kid, oh my God.
That's funny. I love that. Like, oh my God.
Please smash this kid in the face. Please do something. And that's the thing. It's really hit and miss with these child actors in horror movies. Sometimes they knock it out of the park, and then it's the other extreme. Either you're like, say, Danny from The Shining or Jamie from Halloween 4 or even what's his face from Friday the 13th Part 4, Corey Haim's character.
Oh, yeah.
They hit it out of the park, or the kids from It, for example. But then you get those things from The Babadook or from House by the Cemetery or these other movies like, oh, please kill these kids off quick, please.
Please do us all a favor, please.
Funny thing about Halloween, now I was only about 4 when that movie came out, but I remember my mom and dad, who were still together at the time, they went and saw it. And my dad, being the chicken shit he was, after the first 5 minutes, I guess he ran out of the theater. Poor mom didn't get to see the whole thing. He's like, really? That's
my God, so funny. That's so funny. I don't think I've ever walked out on a movie. There were some that I should have, but I never walked out on a movie.
If there were times I thought about it, but it wasn't because it was too scary, just because, all right, this was stupid. I'm about ready to leave right now, but I paid my whatever, $5, $6, $7, $8, $9, $10. I might as well just sit through it.
But it's air conditioned in here. I may as well enjoy it.
Yeah. Now, there have been movies I've watched on television. I'm like, okay, you've got 10, 15 minutes to get my attention, and sometimes it goes off.
Yep. Or I fall asleep.
I was like that with Blair Witch Project. I couldn't do it. It was one night on HBO, and I'm like, really? This is like
I mean, the remake,
this is on par with something my grandfather would have filmed from a home video back in 1972.
right? I mean, and believe it or not, the remake is better than the original. In the
That's
original,
what some people say.
when them start fighting over the map in the original, please, can the witch just zap them both and shut them up?
Yeah, and the thing is, found footage films are just, I just can't get into them just because the only one I've ever been able to sit through was the original VHS.
Oh, yeah.
Probably.
I mean,
just because the first two segments of it I really enjoyed. The one with the Hannah Fearman's characters plays basically a succubus in that one. I like that one. And the following one, which was actually directed by Ty West, those first two were good, and the rest of it I almost fell asleep through. But
yeah, I mean, I don't mind found footage. I mean, I like the Hell House movies. I like the Grave Encounter movies, the Paranormal Activity movies, even though they're a yawn fest. They're watchable still. You know, I like some of it, and then some of it, yeah, no.
Yeah, it's like, but you know, I can respect it just about any movie anyway. If people really love it, great. There's just certain ones that I'm just can't quite get into for whatever reason.
No, neither. I'm like that with the Chucky movies. I can't.
I'm like that with Scream. I can't. It's
there's just something about that Chucky doll that makes me laugh. Like, really, with a knife, he's fucking 3 feet tall.
We're talking about someone who almost laughed during Hereditary. So
yeah, that movie wasn't as good as it was all hyped up to be.
I mean, I liked it. Don't get me wrong, but you know the scene where what's Toni Collette's banging her head up against? She's up there, and I'm like kind of almost laughing at that.
Cuts her head off or something. I mean,
yeah.
I would just like to have known more about the coven and about the grandmother. It was like they smashed that into there to make the movie Hereditary. They didn't really delve into it too much. They just kind of, like I said, smashed it in there to have her be a witch, and just do a little bit more with the coven. Like, explain to us why she was so hot.
That's a movie that you could have almost done 2 movies out of, I think.
I agree. Totally agree.
But then again, you know, sometimes the way studios can be, and though A24 is pretty good at it, some movies want you to cram everything in and whatnot. But which kind of leads to another question. You know, you of course started watching horror movies in the 70s, and you were of course around the 80s as I was. How do you think the horror genre is now, looking at the current state of it here in the 2020s for the most part? Do you think it's good, bad?
I mean, what I wish more studios would do is get original ideas. Stop rehashing the same shit over and over and over. And then you just put a nice little bow on it, and horror lovers go, nom, 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 I'm just going to eat it up. Come on, get something new. Like that Talk to Me movie. That was brilliant. It was brilliant because it was so new and it was so different, and it wasn't, you know, same old campers are going on a camping trip, and they get stuck. They get a flat tire, and here comes a crazy person with a knife.
Right.
Yeah, I think if they start doing more movies like that, like Talk to Me, and like When Evil Lurks, I mean, those kind of movies are perfect, I think, for the 2024s. Now, there's other movies out there that are not so good, and I know a lot of people love them, but it's just, some of them are just not for me. They're too artsy fartsy. But I did love Talk to Me, and that artsy fartsy crap needs to go away, because that was for a while.
Elevated horror.
That's all the kind of stuff we were getting there for like 2 years. I'm like, come on, give me it like it's out and out.
Well, see, that's why I liked the movie X so much. Is it was, and Pearl for that matter, it blended the exact right blend of some of the gritty horror that we grew up watching, while still making it a very
New.
a very new and fresh take on it that
Yep.
still had some depth to all the characters have a lot of depth to them.
Right.
And I think Ty West did a terrific job of getting that just right. And I'm looking forward to Maxine when that comes out later this year.
Yeah,
How that ends.
I am too. I can't. Yeah, I'm interested to see where he's going to take it. You know.
I think the problem with horror is one thing. It's in a hell of a lot better of a state than other genres right now. The superhero genre is about on its way out because no one wants. They're losing money left and right, which in a way I'm kind of happy to see them, because if you're going to make $300 million pile of crap, I hope it loses money. Maybe it'll teach you a lesson.
Right.
Comedies, unfortunately, are gone. You know, the only
just all that woke crap, all that cancel culture. They got rid of all the funny stuff. You know.
Yeah. But horror's still in a good place. I think the problem is the best horror is not mainstream horror. It's not always getting those big wide releases. You know, for me, my two favorite films of last year anyway were God is a Bullet, which is more of a suspense thriller.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Revenge movie with, if you've watched Game of Thrones, guy who plays Jaime Lannister's in it and kicks ass in it. I highly recommend. And the other one is Candyland, which is basically a very gritty, basically prostitute movie. Basically, is what it is.
Is Candyland the truck stop movie?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I loved Cobweb too, because that didn't have.
I just watched that this past week.
Great tension and great writing and pacing in that movie. Like, I was literally almost, you know what I mean? So that Cobweb's up there for me. You know, I'm a sucker for Sam Raimi. I can't help it. Evil Dead Rise is on there too. For my
and that was way better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and Last Voyage of the Demeter, because I'm a huge vampire person.
Well, for me, Dracula 1931 was my gateway. I was 5 years old when I first saw that late night on a local television show. Never since then, I've been a Dracula nut. So
was that Bela Lugosi, 1931?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And I even just recently, a couple weeks ago, watched Dario Argento's Dracula, and I know a lot of people don't like that, but I loved it. I thought
it's a little artsy fartsy for me again. It's that weird lighting, that weird artsy.
The Giallo stuff, yeah.
Ah, come on. And
it was a very vicious Dracula.
It was.
There's that scene where he just rips about 7 people apart like that.
Like it's nothing. Like he's tying his shoes.
Mm-hmm. So that part of it I like. So I like the performance of Dracula in that one. Being a guy, I did like the sexuality in that as well, because they didn't hold back. I like it when movies don't hold back on that stuff. It drives me nuts when I'm watching an R-rated film and you got 2 people having sex, but they still have their clothes on. It's like, earn the rating, will ya?
Yeah, that's that. Nobody does that. Yeah, nobody does.
Yes, that's not how it works. Trust me, I have 2 kids. I know how this works.
Yeah, I have 2 kids too, so yeah, I can at least prove it twice.
But I get that. In the past month, I've been watching a lot of Giallo movies because I've never really watched too many of them.
Okay.
And so far, they've been kind of hit and miss with me, because most of them are really more or less murder mysteries than they are horror, which I like that.
I think it got lumped into the horror genre probably because of the murder in it, but it's not like flat out zombie werewolves or whatever.
No, even though a few of them are, but based on what I've watched so far, especially the ones that go back to the 60s, the ones with like Barbara Steele and so forth, are very much more or less murder mysteries.
Right. With like go-go girls, with like go-go dancers almost.
You can tell they're very much 60s and early 70s.
60s shaking everything they got. Yeah. My favorite vampires are 30 Days a Night.
That is an excellent movie. Yeah, that's a very good one.
Vampires are supposed to be. Not that.
John Carpenter's Vampires as well.
What's that?
John Carpenter's Vampires.
Oh yeah, I mean anything John Carpenter.
Yeah, that was like the book. I remember. I was like, gosh, sometimes as a parent, you have to wonder when are my kids going to be ready to watch this or not. And sometimes especially with my son, I'm like, I have a good gauge because I had to think. Well, let's see, I was like 14 when I first watched Hellraiser, so yeah, he should be able to handle Hatchet. Yeah.
That's a good one. Yeah, those are good ones. Those are good ones.
In fact, we met Kane Hodder at the con we went to in Denver, and I was because that's who my son wanted to meet and get his autograph, and like, all right, I wonder if he's going to grab a Friday the 13th photo, have him. Instead, my son grabs a Victor Crowley picture instead, and it gives him like,
I love it.
All right, awesome.
Kane Hodder was shocked to see a Victor Crowley photograph instead of a Jason one.
Yeah, well, he did have, he has a big display, but like 90% of them are of Jason and a little bit of Victor Crowley. And yeah, my son picked that one and over the Jason ones, even though he likes the Jason movies too.
Yeah, who doesn't? I mean, it's, horror royalty. You have to know who Jason Voorhees is, and you have to know who Pamela Voorhees is, and it's horror royalty. If you're a horror lover and you say you don't know who Jason is, you better not say that at convention. You might get beaten up.
Nope, definitely not. And and those movies will always have their place. And back to what you were saying, every studio should have like a panel of 4 or 5 people that are doing nothing but reading new horror books that have come out and trying to decide this one would make a good movie. Let's do it.
Yep, exactly. And instead of just saying, okay, well, we know that this character Chucky is established. Let's put a TV series out about him. No, why don't you take all that money and make a movie that's new and different? But they don't.
Exactly. And to my surprise, we're talking about the new the Evil Dead movie. Wow, I saw 10. I don't know if you've seen, or saw X. I don't know if you've seen it. That is way better than it had every right to be. I mean, that's easily probably the second best one in the whole series. And it's not very often you can say the 10th entry of a series is going to be that good, but it was. And
that's so funny. The 10th entry. She's not the first, second, the 10th one. That's so funny.
Yeah. Which you don't see very often in these series. By the time you get past parts 3 or 4, that's when they kind of go down.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, look at Halloween. We back to Buster.
Oh, that's been a while. About 4 or 5 different timelines going. And
yeah, no. See, that's what turned me off of the superhero stuff. All those different timelines for the X-Men. Come on. Just zapping some bad guys with her lightning, and I'm good. I don't need all these crazy timelines. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Same thing with Batman. How many different Batman movies do I need in my lifetime?
Right, and that last one was so dark when he hated Superman so much, bro.
I did watch Batman versus Superman just to see how bad it was, and yeah, it was that bad. And
I mean, Batman was so dark, and I get that he's the Dark Knight, but come on.
They went a little too far with that, I think. And one thing is that now I want to I just want to sit down and talk with George Clooney and say, George, your Batman wasn't that bad after all. The movie was bad, but you weren't bad at all.
That's saying something about the current state of Batman, if you're willing to say that.
And from what I hear, the newest one with Robert Pattinson was good. I just have no desire. I mean, I got my Michael Keaton fix.
Right.
Christian Bale was really good.
Yep.
I'm good with that. I've seen him fight the Joker a couple times. I'm good.
Yep. I always say, I'm Batman. I need a Ricola. Oh my gosh. Wow, we get off topic easy.
Oh, that's fine. I'm curious, they're supposed to be doing this Crystal Lake television series on, I guess it's supposed to be a prequel. And once again, it's like, well, how much backstory do we really need of Pamela Voorhees? Really?
Right. I mean, is this her backstory when Jason drowns and then she goes ape shit crazy and she kills all the counselors then?
I
Or,
guess I don't know how they're doing this, but I'm like, I don't know if it's gonna, a couple episodes of it might be good, but to do a full series, I just don't know if that's enough to keep the
no.
Friday the 13th fans, including us, that engaged in it,
Just
really.
10 episodes of that. There has to be some fun ones, and who wants to watch people just at a camp swimming around and doing nothing? No.
Yeah,
You
that's
need
just not what
13.
I've always said. If they ever do another Friday the 13th movie, most of the time they've always take place during the summer. Well, Friday the 13th can take place anytime during the year. Do one in the winter.
Ooh, with ice skaters on the lake.
Exactly. Have it everything snowed in. You have that really claustrophobic feel, kind
Yeah.
of like what you would get from The Shining or The Lodge. Only throw Jason into it and see what kind of fun you can have with it.
Oh yeah, that would be. Yeah, you make the snow like a character in the movie almost. Yeah.
If you ever were to do another movie, that's the direction they should go, I think.
You write the script for that, my friend. You should write the script for that.
Maybe I will someday. And I've always thought, too, when you watch the original Die Hard movie, that could easily be a slasher film.
Oh, easily.
With Bruce Willis is basically a slasher villain in that, only it's flipped.
Right.
Because he's taking out these guys one by one. They don't know who they're dealing with, really.
Right.
You could turn that easily into, name it, any slasher villain or any horror villain, period, and turn that into a horror film. Easy.
Absolutely. He goes and hacks them up instead of tying them up or whatever. John McClane.
So,
John McClane.
yeah. Yeah, John McClane. Yeah. Well, and you could even flip it where John McClane is on the other side and 4 or 5 monsters get released in this building and he's got to deal with every single one of them.
He has to go hunt them down and take care of them. That's
Yeah.
a good idea too. You're just full of good ideas today, aren't you?
I guess. Well, that Jack and Coke really helps.
There you go. Yeah, about ready to go.
So is it safe to say that Halloween overall, though, would be your favorite series, I guess?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, there's some stinkers in there, but
Mm-hmm.
overall, Halloween has Michael Myers has my heart. Yeah, huge Michael fan.
Probably a close second for me. I think Hellraiser's been my number one. And once again, that's a series that's got a ton of stinkers, but on the
Right.
strength of the first 4 movies that all went to theater and the most recent one, that's kind of good enough for me. I can kind of ignore the crap in the middle, I guess.
Yeah, that last Hellraiser, those Cenobites were exquisite. They were just so perfectly done.
They did. That's how you do a reboot. You have to kind of change things up. And that movie had its flaws too. I didn't like any of the human characters.
No, but those Cenobites were wow.
Exactly. No one's going to ever fill Doug Bradley's shoes, but Jamie Clayton knocked it out. That's how you redo that one if you're going to do it.
They didn't try and make her Pinhead in the Doug Bradley Pinhead look. They made her a different look altogether, but with just pins in her.
Yeah, because the other actors that did some of those later sequels just came across as cheap Doug Bradley cosplays.
Yep. When you order
this one, she was allowed to, and I think it was brilliant having a female do it just for that reason, because that's going to avoid any comparisons to Doug Bradley's whatsoever.
Yep. And I loved how in that movie that you weren't sure at certain points when she's talking, you're not sure if that's a man or a woman.
She's actually, that actress is actually transgender.
I love that. Really? I didn't know that.
And that's really kind of how her voice, and I'm not going to pretend to know the whole science on it. That's really how her voice is almost like in real life.
Yeah, that was like, I was looking at her and I was like, I don't know, is that a guy or a girl? I think it's a girl. But then,
sure enough, her voice is amplified a little bit.
Right.
But
I'd look at her and I'd be like, I don't know, this might be a guy. I don't.
But so I'd be curious. I mean, if they as far as I'm concerned, if that's the last Hellraiser movie that's ever made, great. It ended on a good note, but chances are they'll probably do another one, and hopefully it ends up being as good as that one was, if not better.
Yeah, I mean, those Cenobites were just unbelievable. I mean, my second after Halloween has to be the first two Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Not the first two. Let me retrace that. The first one and the third one, because Nightmare on Elm Street 2 sucked ass. So Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Freddy got my second, but he's number 2 for me, based on those two movies alone.
Yeah, those are. Yeah, 2 is a real divisive one there, but
it's awful.
I was okay with 2, but 3, that should have ended it right there.
Yeah,
and then Freddy kind of becomes a bit of more of a stand-up comedian at times then, but
yeah, exactly. They gave him too much personality.
Oh, but, sorry, cat just jumped up here.
It's like, what the heck was that? My 2 cats are somewhere.
Hold on, either
they're out doing cat stuff, I guess. Downstairs.
Hold on, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, I can't hear you. Hold on a second.
Are you good? Hello? Can you hear me?
Let me. He gets enough as it is, but anyhow, I forget what we were talking. Okay, yeah, we were talking about Nightmare on Elm Street, I think.
Yep. How Freddy's 1 and 3 movies are cinematic gold, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. One thing I will say about Friday the 13th, though, really out of that whole series, there's only maybe 2 movies that I'll probably never watch again.
There's a couple.
That's probably Jason Takes Manhattan and Jason Lives. Or not Jason Lives, but Jason Goes to Hell. Those 2 I'm like, on.
And Space One. The one he's in space.
I can watch that for what it is.
But, I mean,
I can enjoy it for what it is, but
I do like the scene where he freezes that chick's head. It smashes her head.
That was one of the best there. But yeah, so that's like a consistent series. There's like nothing really awful that I would say out of that series. And Evil Dead's the kind of same way. I don't think they've ever made a bad Evil Dead movie. They haven't made that many, which is probably smart that they've only made like 4 or 5 of them.
5 of them, yeah. I think the 5th one just came out. The Evil Dead Rise was 5. Which over
a span of 40 years, that's probably the smart way of doing that. Don't make too many too quick.
Yeah, they're not trying to grub all that money, you know. Oh my goodness, they kicked my butt.
Oh, yeah. So, anyhow, I think that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thanks for joining us. Hope everyone enjoyed our rambles here and learned something new. I will, of course, I'll have the links to your books. I'll put that down in the description in the comments, so everyone feel free to take a look at Kathleen's books on Amazon, where you can purchase on Amazon. And are they available anywhere else besides the Amazon?
They're just Amazon right now.
Okay. All righty. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you on our next episode.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks, Josh.